It hasn't really, there were no shortcomings in their competence, but it has perhaps highlighted shortcomings in their mandate.
Well, Dooley Awadalla, thank you so much for joining us in our studio today. It's a pleasure to have you back and a pleasure to meet you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for having me here, Jack.
Wonderful. We're going to talk about a really interesting topic that's cropped up over the last week. The problems in Latvia and this big banking scandal with the ABLV bank. This has caused some problems for the ECB. What kind of impact do you expect this crisis to have moving forward?
Well, I think this current crisis has definitely highlighted some structural issues or some shortages in the ECB. Mm-hmm. Although they haven't really done anything, they have fulfilled their mandate, so to speak. There's talk right now where there's questions. It has raised questions as to whether or not their mandate is large enough. After the banking crisis in 2008, 2009, the ECB set up something called the Single Supervisory Mechanism, the SSM. Mm-hmm. Which is basically a mechanism whereby the ECB kind of imposes supervision or regulation. It forms a task force with the local national authorities, normally the local central bank, and they help them in supervising the largest institutions within a country. But even once any discrepancies or anything like that are noticed, then they must refer the issues to the local authorities, and they have no power of actually policing. They can only supervise. So although it hasn't really, there were no shortcomings in their competence, but it has perhaps highlighted shortcomings in their mandate.
Does the fact that these allegations were brought forward by the US Treasury, does that really harm the EU and the Euro?
Well, I mean, I don't think it helps. It definitely shows or highlights also the bureaucratic and cumbersome nature of the ECB. The ECB cannot just act unilaterally. As I said before, they must kind of forward any concerns to the local competent authorities, mm-hmm. Whereas the U.S. Treasury can act unilaterally and directly, and they don't have to refer their decisions to anybody else or through any committees before imposing any kind of sanctions on places like this. To put this in perspective, though, in general, we've seen bank failures in Greece, in Cyprus, in Spain, in Portugal, in Italy. And the failure of the third largest bank in Latvia is by no means going to be detrimental to the euro or to the EU over the long term. But once again, it shows the deficiencies within the SSM, and those need to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. So with all that in mind, and as you kind of said, how the ECB setup allows this autonomy in the nation states, do you expect there to be any sort of sweeping changes to the way the ECB runs itself following this?
Yes, I mean, there will be implications, let's say, from this. I'm not sure about sweeping changes. The ECB doesn't do anything quickly. Nothing in Europe gets done quickly, I guess. But anyway, as the 9 other countries that are part of the EU, but not within the Eurozone, as they continue towards integration, the ECB must put into place regulations which kind of allow it to maintain standards throughout anti-money laundering standards throughout Europe. So at the moment, as I said, the mandate of the SSM also, it only really checks of the compliance of the local institutions against Basel, against the Basel Accords and the EBA, the European Banking Authority regulations, but they don't really go into any anti-money laundering, etc. And I think as the Czech Republic, Romania, Poland, as these countries start Bulgaria, as they come into the euro, we're going to have to see some kind of emphasis on anti-money laundering, perhaps the creation of an anti-money laundering unit under the ECB or something like this. We can't forget that the ECB, the actions of any of these local authorities actually impact the Eurozone as a whole. And the ECB, although it has limited powers and a limited mandate, its reputation depends on the actions of others. And so as we move forward, I think we will see them try to impose more regulation, more standards, so that the standards are harmonized across the union, and more supervision, more direct supervision, policing.
Well, Dooley, thank you so much for speaking with me. It's been a real pleasure, and thanks for sharing your insight with everyone.
Thanks for having me, Jack. Thank you.
And thank you for watching. If you like this interview and would like to find out more, be sure to head over to dukascopy.tv.